Candlelight flickered softly, giving a soothing glow over the exquisite table, which was decked with delicate flowers and shining flatware. Catherine and Kelvin celebrated her birthday in a high-end restaurant, where laughter and joy filled the air. The environment was tranquil, with a romantic undertone. Kelvin lifted a glass to Catherine, his gorgeous grin and eyes full of devotion. He stood up, held Catherine's hand, and peered into her eyes with unshakable affection amidst the clinking of glasses and the quiet murmur of conversation around them. "Catherine," he said, his voice overflowing with sorrow, "these are the most cherished moments of my life. You offer joy to my days, and I can't picture my life without you." A silence came over the gathering as he spoke, and Catherine's heart raced with excitement. Kelvin's face softened even more as he dug into his pocket and pulled out a little velvet box. Catherine let out a surprised gasp as Kelvin got down on one knee and extended the box to her. "Catherine, will you marry me?" he pleaded, his voice cracking. Catherine's eyes welled up with tears as she nodded, unable to form words in the middle of the overpowering flood of emotions. Joy, love, and a bright future flashed across her imagination. As Kelvin placed the ring onto her finger, the restaurant erupted in applause and enthusiasm, capping the moment with a kiss full of hope and dreams. Despite the joy, a dramatic change in Kelvin's manner became clear. His smile faded, and he was replaced by a look of profound agony. As the joyous atmosphere gave way to concern, he gripped his head, grimacing in pain. Kelvin's hand trembled and his eyes became blank. Catherine felt a flash of panic as Kelvin's body convulsed, the candlelight casting frightening shadows across his distorted face. As mayhem erupted, shattering the exquisite scene of their particular moment, time seemed to stand still. As Kelvin's world fell into darkness, the happy event turned into an unforeseen nightmare. The tranquil calm of the fancy eatery was disrupted. Catherine's heart was racing like a wild stallion, and her breaths came in short, furious bursts. Panic flooded her veins, taking away the joy of Kelvin's proposal. Patrons around them gasped and whispered, their gaze fixated on the developing tragedy. The hurried motions of paramedics interrupted the steady hum of discussions. Catherine clutched Kelvin's hand, feeling the vibrations go through his body. In the thick of the crisis, her voice trembled as she sought to soothe him, the echoes of his kind proposal fading into the distance. Outside, sirens blasted, marking the coming of an ambulance. Catherine's thoughts raced, the sight around her a flurry of flashing lights, worried faces and hurried voices. Fear, confusion, and an overwhelming sensation of powerlessness whirled through her mind. The gravity of the situation became more pressing with each passing moment. The romantic evening had taken an unexpected and terrible turn. Catherine clung to the hope that Kelvin would be okay, yearning for an end to this unexpected horror. Catherine remained frozen, her heart heavy with fear. As the paramedics delicately put Kelvin onto a stretcher, she trailed the medical team, the bright lights of the ambulance mingling with her tears, which obscured her eyesight. Her mind was a tornado of questions and concerns about Kelvin and their relationship. As they rushed Kelvin inside the emergency room, the hospital's sterile walls and antiseptic aroma felt chilly on Catherine's skin. Doctors and nurses crowded around him, their hurried actions a stark contrast to the pleasant evening they had just had. Catherine stood there, her heart hurting with worry. The warmth that had pervaded the room during Kelvin's proposal had faded, replaced by the hard reality of the unknown. Kelvin's life was in danger, and Catherine stood by his side, clinging to hope in the middle of the chaos, hoping for a glimpse of light in the midst of this unexpected, stormy darkness. Catherine was surrounded by the sterile medical surroundings as she stood guard by Kelvin's bedside. Machines buzzed rhythmically, punctuated by intermittent beeps and whirs, echoing the looming uncertainty. Kelvin, once vivacious, lay motionless, surrounded by sterile hospital sheets, his figure fragile against the stark white surroundings. Doctors and nurses rushed around, their hurried motions a stark contrast to the romantic atmosphere of the restaurant just hours before. Catherine's heart wrenched as she watched them perform tests. their faces solemn and attentive. Every second stretched into an eternity, etching deeper worry lines onto Catherine's face. Kelvin was unconscious, his breathing laborious and shallow. Catherine sat by his side, silently supporting him by holding his hand. The passion that had filled the air during the proposal had faded, overtaken by the harsh reality of Kelvin's precarious situation. The doctor's statements were tinted with trepidation, portraying a picture of hope mixed with trepidation. They informed Catherine that Kelvin had survived the seizure, but they couldn't guarantee the severity of the consequences. His rehabilitation was promising, but it was shadowed by prospective difficulties, which weighed heavily on Catherine's mind. Days passed into nights as Catherine stayed at Kelvin's side. She muttered encouraging words, waiting for any sign of his consciousness to break through the silence. She longed for the sound of his voice and the warmth of his touch, hoping for a glimpse of the Kelvin she remembered in the professional setting of the antiseptic hospital room. Uncertainty hung over their heads like a black cloud. Catherine was torn between two emotions, love for Kelvin and fear of an unpredictable tomorrow. The once enticing proposition had become caught in a web of uncertainties and unresolved questions about the life they had imagined for themselves. Catherine's thoughts whirled in the quiet intervals between medical operations and whispered chats, divided between her love for Kelvin and the tremendous uncertainty of what lay ahead. The stark walls of the hospital seemed to reflect her mental turmoil, a swirling sea of optimism, anxiety, and an unshakable sense of approaching upheaval. Days went into weeks, and Catherine's second home became the hospital. Kelvin, once vivacious, lay in a hospital bed, his recuperation slow and uncertain. Catherine remained by his side, her heart torn between undying love and the terrifying uncertainty of their future together. Kelvin had survived the seizure, but its after effects hung over him like a terrible shadow. His recuperation was hampered by cognitive issues, which left him bewildered and unable to regain his bearings. Catherine observed his anguish, her heart throbbing with the agony of seeing the man she loved struggle with this unexpected task. Their interactions were now peppered with lapses in recall and periods of bewilderment. Kelvin's vivid flame seemed to have faded, replaced by a shroud of uncertainty that hung heavily between them. The thought of marriage, which had once appeared exciting and promising, now seemed overwhelming and unclear. Catherine was dealing with a seemingly insurmountable internal battle. Her love for Kelvin was unwavering, but the overwhelming reality of an uncertain future weighed hard on her. The once clear route to marriage appeared to be clouded by uncertainties and whispered worries. Catherine was deeply troubled by the unsolved conflict between their desire for a life together and the stark reality of Kelvin's situation. Her heart yearned for the Kelvin she remembered, but the future appeared to be wrapped in an unnerving cloud of unpredictability. Catherine's thoughts traveled through a maze of emotions in the quiet minutes by Kelvin's bedside. She struggled with questions that seemed to have no simple answers. Questions about commitment, sacrifice, and the ability to negotiate a life together in the face of the unanticipated problems they suddenly faced. The love that had grown between them remained steadfast, but the once promised future appeared to be adrift in uncertainty. Catherine found herself at a crossroads, caught between supporting Kelvin through the upcoming difficulties and making a heartbreaking decision that would change both of their lives forever. The weight of Catherine's decision loomed huge as she sat in the silent hospital room. The unsolved conflict between her love for Kelvin and her fear of an uncertain future caused her great emotional turmoil. The gravity of her decision, whatever it was, hung thick in the air, placing her on the verge of a life-altering decision.